Okay, my computer is telling me that we are now streaming live on YouTube, and I'd like to say hello to everyone out there in the YouTube land. It's hold on. There we go. Um, Again, we're streaming live on YouTube land out here. It's good to have you with us today. This segment of Momentum, a stewardship idea, a day after Thanksgiving, a day after Thanksgiving. All right. And again, it's great to have my co-host on here, my host, my friend, my buddy. Some of you actually saw a lot of us on yesterday because you were sitting at the dinner table. Hopefully you were not eating a whole lot, but you probably used some salt and pepper. So my name is Salt, and Salt always got to have his pepper. And I want to introduce Pepper, Elder Jeffrey Healy. Elder Healy, how are you today?
I am great. I got to tell you, I had forgotten about this. I saw the best little cartoon showed this turkey sitting in an easy chair reading the paper, and it had the weather for the week. This was on Monday. He's reading the paper and it says Monday weather 63 degrees. Tuesday
63.
Yeah, Tuesday weather 59 degrees. Not bad. Wednesday weather 61 degrees. Sounds pretty good. Thursday weather 350 degrees. Uh-oh, he's going to be Thanksgiving dinner.
That's funny. 350. Oh, you got me on that one. Well, yeah. I should have been on that. You know, I could associate with turkeys from time to time. So that's a good thing. Well, good, man. So, again, it's a lazy Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. They call it Black Friday. I don't know what that means. I guess it's the day that certain retailers go into black. Is that what that means?
I think it is.
Going to the black? Or is that an aberration of some sort?
I think you're probably right. There is such seasonality to the retail business. This is the month when they pretty much make it or they don't. This 4-week period between now and Christmas Day.
Wow. I wonder what is life like living that way. Well, you have to have 6 weeks to determine it. That's a lot of stuff going on, man.
Yeah, I mean, with this pandemic, the fact that they keep these physical buildings for all that time, and they really use it that little bit of time. I almost think of it like a restaurant that would only serve between 9:45 to 11:15 every evening. Like that's it. They own the restaurant for 24 hours a day, but they only really do any business that little bit. These retailers that have huge boxes, you look at these big stores, nobody's been in them.
Mm-hmm.
And those, I think it's up in San Rafael, what had been a pretty big shopping center, I think is going to end up being an Amazon distribution center.
Amazon distribution center. So, are you suggesting that I should possibly buy more stock in Amazon?
Well, Curtis, what will you buy in stock in Amazon? Do you want to do it because other people are going to think it's a good idea, or are you trying to put money into the company Amazon?
Okay, I'm going to be serious. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the things that we've decided to do. We're going to switch some things around here because I get a lot of comments that say specifically, you have a gift that's important to the body of Christ, right? Which is, as a pastor, you've been preaching since you was 19 years old, the lay of the land. You went to undergraduate school at Bishop College, right? You got some great friends from there, great network of pastors and evangelists coming, from Bishop College. You're from the Bay Area, the Bay Area. You've gone to school, right? You worked on Wall Street, right? You've actively as a trader for, 20, 25 years, something like that, and I still do private equity. They call me the one deal a year guy.
If you do it right, you don't even need one a year.
Right, exactly. One every 5 years or something like that, right? I'm tired. Let's do something else. But anyway, so that's what I thank God for that. You know, Jeff, I really do. And I can accept it. I still would like to get my license back. But anyway, that's up to the Lord if He opened a door. Anyway, moving back, getting back on track. So they're like, you know, man, you have this gift, right? And so people ask me all the time, like one of my deacons the other day at church was talking about Bitcoin. And I was trying to say in simple words, run away from it, right? You know, I mean, you know, you work for the government and that's the last investment that needs to be on your mind, you know, which is Bitcoin, you know. So anyway, long story short, people would like for me to talk about it. They don't understand it. I've done maybe a couple of seminars on it. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I have Jeffrey Healy, who's with me on the call today. He's the co-host. He's with me every Friday. Brother Numsi with us every Friday, Brother Numsi. Oh, gosh. I wanted to say that. That's from Eddie Murphy and the Golden Child. Brother Numsi. All right, anyway. And so Jeffrey has way more experience than I do in a certain sector of it, right? You know, I was the guys, you know, that was doing guerrilla warfare. I mean, hey, look, nothing wrong with that. A lot of guys did guerrilla warfare and made tons of money, right? You know, I was able to raise a family and, it was, you know, all was good. Then as my doctor said to me, what's this stuff about religion that you talk, this past, why are you pastoring, right? You know, because she saw it as a clash, right? You know, you have a great job as a stockbroker. Why are you talking about being a pastor, right? So, but you know, I think we've had some discussions and we've dealt with that also. So let's have the Faust discussion later a little bit to help people. So anyway, so let's talk about the stock market a little bit. Now, Jeffrey, you see he hasn't said anything at all because he wants me to talk about venture capital, right, and private equity, which is the discussion to really have. It really is, right? It's how you build generational wealth. You don't really build generational wealth, you know, investing in the stock market, unless you're just like extremely lucky. I don't know how many Warren Buffetts there are out there, you know. What's the guy, Jeff, that's Warren Buffett's real guy, the right-hand man? What's his name?
Charlie Unger.
Charles Unger.
Unger, U-N-G-E-R.
U-N-G-E-R, Charlie Unger, right? Yeah, that's the guy, that's the brains behind Berkshire Hathaway. Buffett is just the indomitable. How old is he now, Jeffrey? About 90?
About 90, yeah.
And he still eats popsicles.
Yep.
Like ice cream and stuff. And
I had years ago, right after I moved out here, I got a call from a friend of mine talking about the ability to really make money. And this guy said, hey, I've got a client, this lady that has 6,000 shares of stock. And can you talk to her about how she should hedge her 6,000 shares? And I went, you know, I appreciate the call. The people I deal with typically have a little more money than that, but happy to do it. Where does she live? And he said, no, she lives in Omaha. And I said, what stock does she have? And he said, Berkshire Hathaway Class A.
Oh, yeah. How long ago was that?
Well, it was about 20 years ago. At that point, those 6,000 shares are worth about $240 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, here's the way to hedge it. When you need about $60,000, sell a share.
Right. Sell a share.
So, but what she did, Curtis, was she entrusted her money to somebody that spent 24 hours a day looking at the market. Warren Buffett is a brilliant investor, and Warren Buffett, does not buy common stock. He structures transactions.
Okay, come on. Okay, stop right there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we're about to unleash the dragon because Jeffrey is getting ready to tell you why you will never, let me be the bad guy, right? So we got to have a good guy. Oh, somebody's calling right now. I told my brother I always have a show on this time. So let's talk about it real quick, right? You know, just a little bit, right? Because what Jeffrey's he's gonna be good cop. I'm gonna be bad cop, okay? And I'm gonna tell you why you will never invest in a stock like Warren Buffett, and why you should not be on the phone with your friends talking about, you know, man, Warren Buffett bought XYZ. I think I'm gonna buy some too. Yeah, then just shuffle off to vacation town, Buffalo, New York.
Okay, so little nuance here, Curtis. I will buy a stock like Warren Buffett buys. I will not buy the common stock where Warren Buffett has made an investment.
Okay, he's playing with you one more time and again. All right, so tell us what kind of stock that Warren Buffett buys, and this is my Chris Rock impersonation, and it ain't common stock. Come on, Jeffrey, tell us what he buys.
Warren Buffett is a brilliant investor, and in a whole host of areas. What he will do is he will go in and negotiate with a company for a private transaction into that company with the contract gives him different rights than a common stock would have. It gives him a different interest rate on a preferred return. It gives him different liquidity. It gives him governance where he can have an impact. And his money is going into that company. It's not going into another shareholder's pockets that decided it's no longer time to own that stock. The only time, there's two times when an investor if they invest in a company, in a stock, there's only two times when that money is going to the company. When it's an initial public offering, or when it's a secondary offering after the company's been public. Otherwise, you are buying the stock that somebody else bought from somebody else, who bought it from somebody else, who bought it from somebody else. Mm-hmm. If I want to put money into a company, I want the money to go into the company, not into somebody else's pocket that wanted to put money that they thought this piece of paper was going to be worth more than this piece of paper was yesterday.
Okay. So in 2011, according to Time magazine, Warren Buffett bought some Bank of America stock.
Uh-huh.
He got 6% on that.
Huh.
50,000 preferred shares of B of A.
Huh.
He got warrants to purchase 7 million shares of common at $7.14.
Uh-huh.
The stock was as high as 15. And in the money, and Buffett's in the money on those warrants at that point, as soon as he decided to do it, was up 7.5% in trading Thursday. Right now, the average guy looking at that will probably go, well, if Buffett is getting ready to do it, then I am too. But what the average guy doesn't know is that the reason Buffett did it was because of these little trinkets here. He's like, now, okay, this is what I want. We just have to go and buy the stock in the open market. And that's what my friend, my astute investment counselor is saying to us. You know, when we go and buy stock, it's called an open market system, right? You kind of hope that you get what you think you're going to get, but sometimes you really don't get what you think you're going to get. Times are a lot better. When I was a broker, when I first started, it traded in fractions. And so, again, I want to say this because, the Wall Street thing is that, so we were riding down California Street, right? And it was clear that I was a guy on the black horse, in the black cowboy suit like that. And he was the guy on the white horse, in the white suit, the white hat on, dude, because it was two different kinds of style, so style is important when it comes to investing. So let's have an intelligent discussion about that, Jeffrey. Then let's just kind of move away from it. So
Sure. Well,
when you talk about style as a money manager, what does that mean?
Well, it means there are people will look at companies for a number of different reasons. They'll look at what the analysis of the company shows as the current value of that company, looking at all the assets minus the debt, blah, 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 and coming up with the book value of the company. If they have debt outstanding, all these things, and say, right now, if I take all those numbers, take out all the liabilities, and I come up with a number, say $1 million, making this up, and there are 10,000 shares, that means the company's worth $100 a share on current value. If the stock is trading below $100 a share, as a value investor, I'm being very simplistic, I'll buy it if it's less than 100. If I'm a growth investor, I'll say, this company is doing this product. They're making a new phone, and I think the long-term opportunity for that phone to be really good is great. So they're going to have more revenues coming down the road, and that's wonderful. So I want to buy on what I think they're going to be worth someday in the future. I'm buying their growth rate. I think that other people will say, I want to own that. I want to own that stock. Now, so that there's growth, there's value, there's growth at a reasonable price. There's people that buy stocks based upon their dividend yield. Curtis, I was not on a white horse. I was the guy.
I'm just joking, man.
I appreciate that. I was the guy.
But we could talk about that later, man. Because a lot of people
in the shadows.
You were lurking in the shadows. You were lurking in the shadows while I was actually out there acting like, what's the guy, Jordan Balfour, right? D.H. Blair and Company.
I was shorting stocks.
We'll talk about that. That's very un-American.
Bringing truth to an opportunity is not.
That's what a guy told me on the phone. I was pitching. I was like, Bob, I don't know what it was. Clorox, whoever. It don't matter, right? Well, I'll tell you. Let's just short it right here, because you look at the trends and the winds that are blowing, Bob. I think that we may see this stock at 15 before we see it at 100. Right? And he goes, that's a pretty good pitch. I see it at 15 before we see it at 100, right? And he goes, that's un-American. I'm like, what? It's un-American. I think it was Maria Bartiromo's father-in-law stock, that hotel.
I told you before, the first time I looked at the stock, it was at 7, it went to 1. We talked about this last week. The next year I became a short seller because I realized that my opinion, that the system wasn't right. So if I could be a little bit smarter, not be smarter, but understand human behavior, understand stuff like that, could take advantage of those two emotions.
Yes.
That drive greed and fear.
Exactly.
The way you make money is by buying something cheaper than where you're going to sell it. You don't have to do it in that order.
Mm-hmm.
You can sell it. You borrow the stock from somebody and you sell that, and then you buy it when it's cheaper. Same thing.
Yes.
Sell high, buy low. Buy low, sell high.
Oh, they're going to love us. They're going to love us. Because really, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, one of the reasons why Healy and I get along so well is because of what he just said. All right. You got to understand that truth functions everywhere. it functions at every level, and you can try to hide it as much as you want. You can try to sweep it under the rug. Sooner or later, those roots will grow out from under that rug and truth will shine. So you better beware. If you're trying to buy stock, don't listen to these guys talking about, this Bitcoin, and boo, humbug, baha, blah, blah, blah. And don't make me say nothing about Kramer. Don't make, we'll talk about him later. Maybe we should get him on the show.
Okay,
you know
Curtis,
who else? I know Tony Dwyer too. Okay, let's talk about something else.
Ask you a question.
Okay.
There's a philosopher or mathematician years ago named Blaise Pascal.
Yes.
And he was talking about what became known as Pascal's wager.
Mm-hmm.
Pascal's wager said, having to do with Christianity, is it better to have believed and not needed to believe than not believing and you should have?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's been talked about by many people saying, gosh, that's why I believe, because I want to make sure if there's a good pot of gold there at the end that I'm going to get my part of that pot of gold. Does that, and it's not the only answer, but doesn't that lead one in a, if you're looking at my return, does that not lead you to a religion that offers the biggest payoff at the end?
Mm-hmm.
So should we, if that were the case, I'm going to go shopping for a religion that gives me the biggest benefit. Should I not be looking for a place to express my faith in humankind, my admiration of a creator that gave us this time for our spirits to occupy these bodies? And I'm not saying those are the only options, but I hear Pascal's wager and go, that's a bad argument.
Mm-hmm.
It leads to being a casual Christian.
Mm-hmm. 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 It's interesting when you say that, because my mind moves towards the topic of redwood trees, right? Redwood trees have a very intricate system for growth and connection, right? And they are very visible. They are very visible. I think that's why we're drawn to these monuments, right? Because they are just so visible. However, the work and the connectivity, right, that goes into that system, and you might want to call it redwood tree religion, is a system of connectivity. And it's also a system, like unlike other trees, where you can actually see what they do while they're doing it, because the roots don't run horizontal. They don't run vertical. The roots run horizontal. And so you can see the roots of a redwood tree that's as big as a regular tree, or a 30, 20 foot tall tree, right? Because of their root systems, and they connect horizontally, which helps it to go vertical. So I'm hoping that I'm elucidating that topic, that discussion in a question that she gave, as we gerrymander off I shouldn't say gerrymander, but as we meander away, from the discussion about money, which is, listen, we wet your whistle, right? We gave you something to read. One day, watch one show, Healy, they'll be asking questions about what do you think about? And then we'll have to answer or something like that. And I'll pull up a chart or something, and then we'll do our thing, right? But when it comes to building wealth, right? We could be like an onion tree or onion plant, right? Which grows, in 6 to 8 months and it withers away. Or you could be like a redwood tree, which will grow for several hundreds of years and leave an indelible stain on the ground of humanity, right? The same thing with investing, and I think that's what we really want to get to when it comes to that, because, we have a philosophy, and you can chime in on this philosophy, and that is, is it better to go ahead and make your money now, or is it better to make a sacrifice so that generations down the road can benefit, from the shade trees that you planted and you knew that you would never sit up under those shade trees?
Well, that's a wonderful Greek quote you draw from there. From the agricultural perspective, when you think about it, and I'm going to keep your analog going, your analogy there, there are row crops and permanent crops. Row crops are crops you have to plant the seeds every year. Like you said, the onion grows, get it done. And then there are permanent crops. That would be a walnut tree, trees that bear fruit over many, many years. Part of the dilemma that farmers will have is that, you rip the land, you tear up all the soil underneath and plant your tree, say it's a walnut tree, then you get one leaf. That's the first time the tree puts some leaves out. No walnuts that year. You get a second leaf, maybe one or two walnuts, but not enough to harvest. Third year, a couple more. It's not till about the sixth or seventh year that you've got, it's like the seventh leaf is when you start getting a harvestable crop. And that walnut it's going to produce great walnuts for another 18 years or so. Then it'll start subsiding in its yield. So the farmer has to say, okay, I've got so many acres. It's better long-term to have all walnuts, but I can't survive the first 7 years because I don't have enough cash flow. I don't have enough crop going to wait.
Mm-hmm.
So what a farmer will often do is say, okay, what have I got that I can plant as a row crop for a portion of my land, knowing that that's going to give me current cash if I'll be able to sell that crop. And each year I want to convert a portion of my row crop land to permanent crop land so that eventually I can be predominantly, if not entirely, permanent crop. Then at about year 20, I start taking those trees that aren't doing really well and I replace them with new trees, knowing it'll take them about 6 or 7 years, at which time now I have permanent crop. Mm-hmm. So that's a sort of a squeaky or a squeegee analogy, but the fact is, if you gotta live, you gotta live, and realize you can't wait for 7 years to eat. So try to adjust your balance from current cash to long-term cash. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think that is fertile conversation for communities that need to build themselves. And, this is the perfect time for community leaders to start crafting these kind of policies. For instance, I pastor in East Oakland, right? Jeff's church is in Tiburon, California, right? And what's interesting? I was on your church's website the other day. Ooh. Did you hear that? Did y'all hear that? Okay, maybe not on that one. But watch this. Watch this. I'm gonna try to push this. I want my African American pastors, my buddies. I want y'all to hear what I got to say. So I go on Jeff's website at his church, Westminster Presbyterian Church in Tiburon, California. I go to the giving button, ways that you can give. And lo and behold, down there is a button for stock. Mm-hmm. Doesn't say what kind of stock. It could be private, it could be public, it could be preferred, it could be bonds, right? But it's a part of the cultural backdrop, right? It's is common, right? So what I'm saying is that I'm going to be putting that on Faith's website, Ways to Give, okay? Because we have to understand the long-term value. Had a friend when I first started working in the financial industry in San Francisco. I worked for the Equitable at 120 Montgomery Street, right? It was like, wow, downtown San Francisco, financial district every day. Charles Schwab across the street. I would see what the market was doing before I went in. Obviously, insurance is not so much concerned about the day-to-day machinations of and gyrations of stocks. However, it gave me like a sense of a financial leverage, right? And what's quite common, is understanding the long-term implications of the stock market. Work with a girl. I'm not going to say her name. I should call her one day, see how she's doing. But anyway, back in the day, Jeffrey, her grandfather, she's from Swampscotch, Massachusetts. Remind me to talk about Swampscotch before we leave, because I need to segue into something. But back in the day, her grandfather bought a seat on the Boston Stock Exchange for almost little or nothing, right? And this was 20 years ago when we worked together. But even then, 20 years ago, she was like, going like, yo, let's go out and get something to eat. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, yeah, I got my quarterly dividend check. My grandmother sends to me every quarter, so let's go, lunch is on me today. Right? You see that and you go, okay, two things are happening. First of all, I don't think that opportunity was really available to African Americans at that time. I could be wrong though, because let's just say he bought it at the end of the 19th century. Okay, so I have to, figure out in my mind, my grandfather was born in 1907, right? I think Northern African Americans, probably had knowledge of those type of episodes, like Alexander Leadsdorf, who came out here to San Francisco, right? But it wasn't, those kind of things are not talked about, in the African American community. So, her grandfather planted a seed. He's long gone, right? And his great grandchildren, right? And his great great grandchildren will benefit, from that exchange. Now I don't know what happened to his seat. I know Archipelago.
Yep.
The NASDAQ, everything has gone digital. And I suppose that he might, they found may have sold that for a nice piece of change. I don't know. But, those kind of seeds need to be planted. And I think they need to be planted even now. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. And also history is written backwards. So it all makes sense later. Nassim Taleb in his book, Fooled by Randomness, this guy that wrote The Black Swan, I think it was in Black Swan. In Black Swan, he begins by asking, if you're adrift at sea, the ship sank, you're in a lifeboat, and I'm sorry for saying this, but you say, God, if you save me, I'll give my life to you. I'll do everything I can for you. And then let's say that person is saved. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the other boats that had people making that were in the same condition, do you think they didn't make the same deal? And their boat did not survive? Mm-hmm. Was it, we've got to find causality here. And to say, well, to try to claim that it was my prayer for intercession to God that allowed me to be saved. one, it's a pretty simplistic assumption that God's going to listen to some prayers and not others. You know, that guy in that other boat was praying just as fervently. Might have had a bunch of stuff that he wanted to do. I'm sort of a guy that looks at history and says, you know, we can rationalize all sorts of stuff. Not really answering your question. The main part I would say is you got to have the conversation, though. You got to have some knowledge. Have the
That's what it is right now. It's not a question; it's the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were in my family, we didn't talk about money much, but we also didn't not talk about money. It was okay to talk about it. It wasn't like money.
Right.
When I bought that stock, my dad, you know, I said, how can I do this? He goes, oh, you know, look at the stock market. He was an engineer, and I bought this stock, and it, you know, crashed and to nothing. And I said, what, you know, it's not fair. And he goes, you want fair? Put it in the bank. You know, they're going to pay you less than what they can make on it. They're in the business of making the difference between what they pay you and what they lend it out to other people, and, you know, figuring out what the default rates, all that kind of stuff are. But you're never really gonna make any money. Figure it out. And when you think you know, that's just when you're getting started. Mm-hmm. When you know that you know, that's when you know you don't know anything at all. That's when you really got to get to work.
I agree.
If it was easy, everybody be doing it.
Be on the inside, man. Gotta open up that information panel so that you could be an insider and not an outsider.
But there are laws against insider. There is not a law against insightful.
I like that.
If I'm trading on non-public information, that's illegal.
Right.
If I am willing to do the work, to go out there and look at stuff, to try to put connections together. Years ago, there was a big flood in St. Louis in 1993. Out at Spirit of St. Louis, right near Chesterfield, Missouri, just west of St. Louis, there was a small factory that made the air inserts that went into Nike tennis shoes. That was all public information. Mm-hmm. Okay. The biggest growth in Nike stock at that time was coming from their air insert, all their tennis shoes that had, or their sports shoes that had the air insert in them. Because of that flood, they had about a 6-month delay in getting air inserts into the factories to put into the shoes. Their revenue numbers dropped. People were afraid, oh my goodness, oh my gosh, something's wrong with Nike. Mm-hmm. What I had was insightful information, all public, and others weren't willing to do the work. Mm-hmm. So I shorted Nike. The stock fell. Mm-hmm. I covered the short. I bought, I borrowed it, sold it at a price, and then bought it back at a cheaper price. And people realized, oh, it was this factory. And now the floodwaters have receded and they're making their air and everything is fine. Mm-hmm. That's not insider information. That's insightful information.
However, if you are an insider and shut your mouth, that's not illegal. You just do what you do as a part of your business plan, and you mind your business. You know, right. Do like Martha Stewart, right? You know, spot away. You know, now which talks about another element of human behavior, right? That is critical, right? I think we're seeing some of that right now in this COVID experience and this COVID environment. You know, that piece of humanity, right? And to be not criminal about it, you know, I don't want to jump off the subject matter because it's good when you learn something and understand that God resides as well in those areas as he does in other areas of life, right? Which means that God dwells with the believer as well as with the non-believer, right? But let's talk about that a little bit, because we've just had Thanksgiving, right? And where I am with that right now, in terms of the teach part on it. Why is Thanksgiving such a big hit on one side of the fence, right? And why have we not tried to understand, how it affected the other people who are at the other end of the table? When I say that, there were European colonists there, right? And we see what America is now. And then there were Native Americans at the table, and we see what they are now. Why are we so reluctant to have that discussion?
Well, one, the winners get to write history.
Winners get to write.
And
is that Navy talk?
Well, it's a great point, and I want to ask you about Squanto in a little bit. I don't. When I'm the picture I see in the mirror, it's sort of funny, Curtis. It's I know I'm probably treading on really thin water here, thin ice. I mean, when men look in the mirror. When women look in a mirror, and I'm again really bad to be going here, but I'm going here. What the heck? It's you and me. When a woman looks in the mirror, she goes, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my goodness, this isn't." They'll find what's wrong with them,
Mm-hmm.
and look in the mirror and go, "I still got it." We'll suck in our gut. So some of us want to see what's wrong. Some of us, it's a lot easier to not go figuring out why we're carrying that extra 15, because that might mean we have to change our behavior. That's hard. If you read Kenneth Johnson's History of America, it's the story of the victors. If you read Howard Zinn's History of America, that's the story from the side of the oppressed. And those aren't the only two history books. You can read whole host of different history books, and you need to read them all. You need to realize that this nation was not built on all good stuff. There were people, as we were talking today, that freedom meant they finally got 3/5 of a vote.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
That's not freedom. But it's a hard conversation to have. It acknowledges that these heroes we had were human. I like the writings of Chesterton when he talks about free will.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a little story about the puppet master where he says that this is a story that he wrote. This is not the Gospel of Chesterton, although it could be. He talks about there being...
He has a gospel, but go ahead.
Yeah.
He was a powerful guy.
Yeah, this puppet master that had these great plays, and he had he had his little puppets going up and down, and they were doing perfect things, and their voices were always perfect. The songs were great. They always came in right on cue. The play was perfect. And Chesterton went, God, but these characters are confined. They don't get a chance to really live life. So Chesterton said, the puppet master cut the strings on the puppets and said, have at it. I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to be here to direct you. I'll be here to help if you need. I'm cutting the strings. I'm not cutting the connections. I'm cutting the strings of control and saying, do your play. I'm here with you. Do your play. Sometimes you're going to miss the cue. You're not going to come in on time. Sometimes your note's going to be discordant with another. But it's your play. I'm with you. It's your play. I like Chesterton's. I view that as sort of the description of what free will is. God's with us, but God's saying, make your mistakes. Still going to love you, but I want you to be able to make your own mistakes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. You make your own mistakes, which means that table is now open for discussion. Because when you say, my mistakes or the mistakes that I have made, right? I think that what you don't want to do is that you don't want to just relive your mistakes in your mind over and over and over and over again, right? I don't think that leads to good mental health. I think it leads to the other way. To acknowledge, that mistake is a different set of agendas, because now you're going to work it out, and what was a mistake now becomes and turns into a victory session. Peter J. Daniels, whom to my knowledge is still alive, is a humanitarian, an Australian humanitarian who came from a very dysfunctional background, right, in Australia. Found the word of the Lord at a crusade by Billy Graham, sponsored by Billy Graham in South Adelaide, and went on to amass one of the largest single reserves of gold bullion, in the world. All right, to the point where he has an island, I think he owns half of Malta or something like that, right? Some Mediterranean island off the Greek coast. But in any event, he looked at the mistakes, right? He looked at coming up, right? He looked at this dysfunctionalism, right? And he was able to rewrite that narrative. And in the rewriting of that narrative, he became a very excellent motivational speaker, author, and philanthropist. So, when you put off discussions that need to be made, right? I think that what happens is that your culture refuses to become the best that it can possibly be, and we need to and I'm bringing it up, because there are just some very, huge blind spots, when it comes to Thanksgiving and the understanding of Thanksgiving, and why do we teach our children these policies, right, for them to live on to another generational standoff or standing point. It doesn't do anybody any service to perpetuate not even a half truth. You want to perpetuate the whole truth. And, again, if you look at the story, you see something on both sides. You see a recognition of humanity, but then you also see the lack of recognition of humanity, as if to say that they are non-persons, non-entity. When you're able to relegate humanity to a point of being a non-person, that is the dangerous piece, because the reality is that we're all capable of doing that. You're capable of doing it to me, and I'm capable of doing it to you. Now, the question is, even in the thought process, how does that taste, on the palate of your consciousness, or the palate of your subconsciousness?
There was a great episode of The Twilight Zone, where it's set, I don't know if this was a movie or just the weekly thing that came out back when you and I were little kids. And so
I played that in church one day. They thought I was crazy. Like, go ahead. They didn't get it. I was like,
So,
sometimes
this
Christianity
episode-
is stuck in the twilight zone.
Exactly. In this episode,
Okay.
there's an army officer. They're on this is World War II. They're on an island out in the Western Pacific. It's the Japanese against the Americans, and this young officer is so dehumanizing the Japanese, because then he can kill them.
Yeah.
And it won't be bad. It won't be a moral injury. In the episode, then a shell lands near him, and he wakes up.
Oh, I remember that episode.
And he's a Japanese soldier.
Japanese. Yes, I remember that.
So, yeah, how do I rationalize taking the life of an equal? I've got to take the life, be it literally or figuratively. And actually, figuratively is more literally when you're talking about enslaving somebody, and enslaving them through chains, through oppression, through law, through the inability to have access to money, the inability to have access to votes, to education. That's all dehumanizing. The only way I can sleep at night is to think of them as something less than human.
Wow. Great discussion. I like that. So that was Jeffrey Healy and I talking. I know people are like, you guys do that all the time?
Yeah.
Kinda. Oh no, we do other things though. I mean, again, we're trying to do ministry. We have some projects going on in East Oakland. One of them is addressing banking problems in East Oakland. Also, we recently got a project where we're trying to address homelessness in East Oakland, in the world, actually. I don't know how you can address homelessness in just one place. It's so widespread, right? Jari would be a great person to get on the show. So let's put Jari on the list. We got some great guests lined up. I wanted to put him on the list earlier. So in any event.
So next week, we've got Patty Iyama.
Yes.
Patty is.
Tell us about Patty.
What an incredible lady. She is. She lives in the East Bay. I'm not sure the exact town. I've been to her house. Really, really cool house. Patty, you don't want to tell a woman's age, 75. But
you know what, dude? You're in trouble.
Huge trouble. So Patty's parents were just phenomenal people. Chizu and I think it was Ernie. They spent World War II. They had a fun vacation going on in Utah. They had this little resort where they stayed called Topaz, sort of a country club. They got to play golf. Had people serving them cocktails every night. It was incredible. Topaz was a concentration camp. Topaz was not a club. They left Topaz because they signed a paper saying they're going to go east because they couldn't come back to the West Coast. Patty was born then and raised in Chicago. Her parents were huge in the reparations movement for the Japanese that had been sent to prison camps, to concentration camps during World War II. They were the family were very involved with the NAACP in Chicago. They were part of the wade-ins in the Lake Michigan in the attempts to allow the beaches to be integrated. They were segregated. They were called wade-ins rather than walk-ins. Patty went to Cal, very involved in the peace movement and the protests there. She spent, I think, 4 months in jail. So just an incredible lady, and she's gonna talk. It's not gonna be comfortable.
Oh, that's good.
It'll be great. Curtis, can we spend 3 minutes on what you and I are working on regarding Officers Eat Last?
Yeah, let's do that. And I wanted to, before we do that, let me just do this. I want to give a shout out to my colleague here. I want to put his picture up there. I want to give a shout out to my colleague, Elijah Christopher Devon Jr. from Harvard University. He has been selected as a Rhodes Scholar
Wow.
in the year 2020. Elijah focuses on travels of Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, and Malcolm X. Elijah and I shared the same discussion space when I was at Harvard, sitting under the teachings of Dr. Cornel West in our dialectical course on the writings of W.E.B. Du Bois. And I want to give another shout out to my man, my colleague, Elijah Christopher Devon Jr. And if you see right there, his hometown is Compton, California. Getting back to the discussion and the conversation, right? What does it take to turn communities around? All right. So shout out to Brother Devon. Shout out to Compton. There's more than rappers in Compton. There's some intellectual guys down there too. All right. Boom. All right, Jeff, go ahead. Let's talk about this.
Okay, real quick, because we're gonna do a lot more on this. Curtis and I speak, gosh, I would say we probably average 2 or 3 times a day. There are sometimes it's, hey, how you doing? Love you, peace, out. Sometimes we normally have a meeting every Tuesday and Thursday morning from 6 till 7:15-ish. So one of the best times of my life are those times. And man, I wake up knowing I better hit the deck running.
What's happening, Phil?
Phil is such a good guy. So we were talking last week about there's an old military adage that officers eat last. That a good leader makes sure that her or his troops eat first. You don't let them. It's not that they're taste testers.
Mm-hmm.
You work for these people. You know, you might be senior in rank and position, but you work for these people.
Right, right.
So what we're working on, and Curtis knows this, or everybody else, we're working on a. I've already written a little piece. Well, maybe a little piece came through me that came from above. But we're going to talk about we've got Phil Dillard, who we mentioned. Phil is phenomenal, and he's going to get a retired Marine Corps colonel. The two of them are going to talk about officers eating last and what that means. We've got the second little piece is going to be by Dr. Chris Caldwell, who just happens to be the doctor in charge of all the emergency services at Zuckerberg San Francisco Hospital and Trauma Center, one of the most incredible medical institutions in the world. And this guy is a guy that Curtis and I talk to every Friday morning. He's going to talk about triage, about making the decisions on who gets treated first. Then we've got a guy talking about when the servant is given the opportunity to be the master, yet realizes the responsibility of that. So, and that's the guy named Curtis Robinson, Curtis O. Robinson Sr.
Oh no.
Who's going to do that talk. Then we've got a young lady, well, younger than me, so that's why everybody's
younger than me too.
Yes, so Janie Mines, who we had on the show before. Janie is the first African-American woman graduate from the United States Naval Academy. Phenomenal lady. Janie's going to be talking about man, the rationalizing creature, how we're able to rationalize things that we shouldn't do because of our mind making connections that are just baloney. So Janie's going to talk about that. Then our final person in this conversation is going to be Rachel Jackson, who we also had on the show.
Yes,
Rachel,
Tribal app.
Yeah, tribal app. It's called tribalapp.com. Exactly. Rachel's a West Point grad, and she's going to call us, bring it all together. And as Curtis tells me, bring it home. She's going to
bring it home, Jeff.
Bring it home. Okay. So she's going to bring it all together, talk about the call, which is we are going to demand that we don't take the vaccine until the people that we are responsible for and with have the opportunity to take it first. They've got autonomy. They can choose to take it or not, but we will not push our way to the head of the line.
All right. You heard it here first on Momentum of Stewardship Idea. Gonna get down and gritty. We're gonna get some music and all that stuff. Go be low riding, baby, on that one. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for your time that we shared this discussion on momentum, a stewardship idea. Again, next week, we'll have Patty Ayama that will talk about that. And then we're going to get this other platform that Jeffrey talked about. It's going to get set up. We're going to have a great discussion on that. And we're going to have some more guests for you on December. Who knew that we would birth this out of a COVID environment? However, what else is there to do other than come together and find ways to make it happen? So again, God bless you. God keep you. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. We'll see you next week on Momentum, a stewardship idea.
Peace
Peace
out.